Hi, good afternoon, good morning. Hi, my name is Beth Thielman. Um, I am a former University of Georgia student. I got my master's at the University of Georgia back in 2008. And before that, I got my bachelor's from Middle Tennessee State University. And so I have degrees in sociology and nonprofit organizations. So the issue of diversity is something that is deeply important to me and that I'm very passionate about in general. I'm pleased to talk to you today about the disability experience. I want to emphasize that um, I can't I can't encapsulate the disability experience by myself, and certainly not in a 5-minute video. So I am just grazing the surface of what is a very, very diverse human experience. Um, but in general, um, it's worth noting that the ADA was only passed in the last 25 years, and there are still people with disabilities that are living in state-funded institutions that are still in the process of being closed down. For many, many years, people with disabilities were kept out of the community. They were institutionalized. Someone like me would be living in a state-funded institution for their whole life. They would be kept out of community life. The assumption being, well, they can't work, they can't be educated, they can't live a normal life, they can't have a relationship with a partner. There's no way. So, thankfully, a lot of that has changed in the public perception, but there are still people that are being affected by it, and there are still people that are living in that situation right now. So that's pretty fascinating and kind of scary that that's still going on. What that means, though, is that society as a whole is really just now beginning to understand. Okay, there are people with disabilities that shockingly want to be treated like human beings and want to participate in their communities. So there are a lot of institutions that are just now starting to understand that. So education and employment are areas where people with disabilities face a lot of obstacles and a lot of just constant struggles to get the accommodations that they need to just have the same experience as their peers. Um, so that is really affecting a lot of people still, and it's quite rare for people with disabilities to even get to the stage of receiving higher education because a lot of these kinds of obstacles and bureaucratic issues and hurdles that have to be jumped through just to get things moving and make sure they have an equal experience. So um, if you see somebody with a disability in your class, that's awesome. They've probably really worked hard to get to that point, just like you have. And so, there's a lot of institutional discrimination still going on, employment, education, just a general kind of social perception of, I'm scared of you, you're weird, you're gross, you're stupid, I don't want to touch you. These are things that are still having to be dealt with by people with disabilities on a regular basis. So it's important when when you interact with people with disabilities. Really, it's good to think carefully about how you speak and how you interact, but don't let those kinds of things stop you from interacting with someone. Please just do your best. Most people with disabilities are very understanding. Um, you might not know the exact words, you might not know the exact thing to do, but just do your best. Treat the person the way you want somebody to treat you, with respect, with dignity, and not like they are afraid to be near you. Um, so that brings me to the point of language. So, how do you talk to a person with disability? How do you talk about a person with a disability? First things first, do not use the word retard or retarded to insult somebody. That's a very pejorative and offensive term across the board in the disability community, um, because you're reducing somebody's very valuable experience to an insult. So definitely stay away from that term. Person with intellectual disability is the preferred term there. And again, never use that to insult somebody. Um, You can either, most people with disabilities either prefer person first language, so that's like a person with a disability instead of a disabled person, or the disabled or the blind, or identity first language. This is more common in the autism community, so they tend to prefer, people with autism tend to prefer being called autistic or an autistic person, because they want to emphasize, look, I'm not afraid of this part of my identity, I embrace it. So it really depends on personal preference, but I think uh, a good default when you don't know the person very well is to start with person first language, and then if you find out that they don't mind a different type of terminology, that's fine. Um, but with person first language, I think the good thing is you're acknowledging that person's identity first. You're saying this is an individual, this is a human, this is a person. This is not a diagnosis or a sickness or an illness that I'm talking to. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. The other thing, and I'll end with this, is that many people with disabilities, you can tell right away. You can see, okay, Beth is a person who uses a wheelchair. Obviously, she has a disability. Okay, got it. Great, moving on. You know, or this person is walking using a cane to assist them with their surroundings. So, they're blind. Clearly, they can't see. This person is communicating with sign language. They're deaf, hearing impaired, etc. However, not everybody with a disability has a disability that you can easily see. For example, people who have disabilities on the autism spectrum, you might not have any idea they're disabled. Um, People who have intellectual disabilities, you can't always tell right away. People with learning disabilities, you can't always tell. People who have had a traumatic brain injury, you don't always know that immediately. Um, so what am I getting at? What about those people? How do you know? How do you know if you're offending somebody? How do you know if you're saying the wrong thing? Well, if you approach it from the standpoint of everybody deserves to be treated with dignity, and everybody should be treated respectfully and with kindness, and um, and with a certain ease of interaction, then I think it'll be fine. Because you don't know what somebody's been through. Somebody that you're talking to in the dining hall, or somebody that seems to be kind of a loner in your class, or just anybody that you talk to, even the most confident person, they might really be dealing with some very difficult situations. So I think in terms of diversity, you know, you can affirm and ascertain that everybody wants to be treated with kindness and respect and dignity like a human being, and that everybody is facing some kind of challenge or some kind of difficulty that we might not be aware of. So, in general, you know, just doing our best to be a decent human to our fellow people is a good rule to follow with diversity. And definitely just try new things and make new relationships, because you never know how it's going to enrich your life or how it's going to enrich that person's life. So, thanks so much for listening and for taking the time to discuss these important issues. I encourage you to research the disability um, community further, or to look up some disabled bloggers for some cool insights on the disability experience. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your class. Thank you very much.